Welcome to the interview and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephen Berger and today I have a wonderful guest. It's my pleasure to introduce a man who's seen a lot of ups and downs in his life, but through that is here and willing to share his story and is involved with spiritually led groups such as Kairos and able to talk from both sides of the coin, from being a former inmate to now as a volunteer. My guest at this time, Tony Cochran.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, sir.
Appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Tony, how are you today?
Pretty good. Just a little worn out.
Worn out?
Yeah, been pretty busy with business, landscaping, and janitorial cleaning. So that keeps me very busy.
Awesome.
But overall, I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Yes.
Now we're on the same Kairos team, Kairos PCI 11.
Mm-hmm.
But Tony and I, we haven't known each other that long.
Mm-hmm.
We briefly crossed paths right before PCI 10. I don't know if you remember over there in the cafeteria with
Yeah.
Ted.
Yes.
And do you remember what you said?
No, not really. You got to remind me. It's
You asked me if I was ready. It was right before we went in.
mm-hmm.
And you asked me if I was ready, and,
Yes.
and you let me know that I wasn't ready for what I was about to experience, and to your credit, you were right. So, phenomenal experience. And then we didn't reconnect until 6 months later
Yes.
to this PCI.
Mm-hmm.
But from that, we've only talked, maybe 4 or 5 times. So I'm going to be learning
Okay.
just as much as they are.
Yes.
So, and with that, I'll say if there's anything that I ask you that you prefer not to ask, I know off the record you've said you're pretty much an open book.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if something does come up that you don't want to talk about or in the moment, just say pass and we'll move on. So,
Got you.
but is there anything else you'd like to say before we start?
I just want to thank you for this opportunity, and I hope those who will be viewing this video will be blessed, will be encouraged. I know some of the questions, and some of the questions I don't know. I'm going to be very, very open and transparent because I believe that from this interview that we would get a better understanding about the prison ministry, and you guys will learn a lot about myself. And I'm just excited, and I just thank you guys for being supportive of this young man here.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you so much. So let's go back. What year did you get locked away, incarcerated?
I was apprehended. That's the right word.
Okay, apprehended.
In June 18th of 2003
Okay.
is when I was arrested for trafficking in drugs.
Okay.
And it was during that time that really life has stopped for me. And the reason why I say I was apprehended is because
Yeah, can you define apprehended, what exactly that means?
it's because when I had sold to a confidential informant,
Okay.
I was able to escape, and I was hiding in the area that the law enforcement was searching for me, and during that time, it was like life had stopped, and while I'm watching them look for me,
Right.
I started to realize that, man, this is not the life for me, and I'm about to spend the rest of my life in prison. And honestly, God started showing me flashes of my life about when people tried to talk to me and encourage me and everything. And the reason why I say I was apprehended is because I basically, came out and turned myself in. And so they apprehended me, they arrested me, and that was the beginning of my new life. That's when life took a turn for me.
So you were basically on the run then.
Well, just for a few hours.
Okay, so very short then.
Yeah, just for a few hours.
But through those few hours, there's a lot going through your head,
A lot, yes.
and a lot. Change is already starting to
to take place.
Right.
You know, because like you said, you know, I wasn't raised in the church.
Right.
You know, so I wasn't raised in a household with family, you know, that taught me how to pray.
Right.
That talked to me about God. That, you know, so growing up, you know, I became a product of my environment. And my environment consisted of drug dealers, pimps, players, you know, you name it.
Right.
And so, you know, at the age of 12 is when, you know, I started to realize that I want to be like my environment.
Sure.
And I really didn't care about what my household, you know, as far as my parents was trying to teach me and show me.
Right.
You know, so I took to the streets of Dayton, Ohio, to be specific.
Okay.
And I became that drug dealer. You know, I became that wannabe pimp. I became a product of my environment. And so you know, but over time, you know, as I got older, you know, people tried to talk to me, you know, hey young man, you know, try to tell me about God.
Right.
And I didn't want to hear that.
Right.
Because it's like, you know, how you gonna tell me about, you know, God that I don't feel I know, you know, so I didn't want to hear those things.
Right.
And like I said, so, you know, that's when life of the street started for me at the age of 12.
Wow. So then, 2003, how old were you then?
At 2003, after being a drug dealer from the age 12,
right,
literally up to the age of 30.
Okay.
So in between,
so a long time then.
Yeah. So in between, you know, I tried to get a job, but didn't have no education. I dropped out of school with a 6th grade education. I believe it's 7th or 8th grade when I dropped out of school.
Okay.
So at the age of 30 is when I was arrested and rescued for the most part.
Now this rescue that you're talking about, now is that these few hours that you're talking about, or just right as you go in, or
it was
kind of combination?
It's a combination of both.
Yeah.
There was a combination of both. Yes.
So go ahead.
Yeah, but there was a combination of both. But just, if I may back up,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
you know, growing up in the streets of Dayton, Ohio, you know, like I said, I was raised by my grandmother, raised by my mother, so never really had a father figure, and so that's why it was so easier for me to cling to the men in the streets, and a lot of those men, you know, were drug dealers, you know, they were pimps, so manhood for me was being taught by what I wore, what kind of car I drove, how many women I messed with,
right,
how much money I have in my pocket. So that's how manhood was defined for me, is because I didn't have a manly figure in my household to teach me how to be a man and to teach me how to, more importantly, be a man of God. You know, so when I was arrested in 2013, I'm sorry, it was
2003.
Yeah, 2003. Yeah. When I was arrested in 2003, you know, that's when, like I said, life started to change for me immediately. But of course, the road wasn't going to be easy,
right?
Because it was my first time going to prison.
Oh yeah.
You know, and you know, so yes.
So leading up to 2003, you know, you talked about, you know, being involved for 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see other people that had went to prison before you, you know, mentors or friends, or did you kind of see that lifestyle and what could have been, or was this, you know, in 2003 when you got arrested, was it a group deal, or was it just you?
Yes, when I was arrested in 2003, it was me and one of my female friends. I was individual, you know, this was an individual transaction, and you know, so over the years, I seen my childhood friends, you know, I seen them go to jail, come out,
right?
You know, and the way we celebrated, you know, it was like, you know, we celebrated them going to jail.
Wow.
You know,
that's interesting.
Because, you know, especially if you catch a drug case, you know what I mean? It's like you get more respect if you catch a drug case and you go to prison. You know, then you come
It's hard to wrap
home,
my head
you know,
around.
we celebrate that, you know, oh, you solid, you real.
Right.
You know, it's like, man, that's insane. You know, so I saw my friends, you know, going to jail and coming out, but I said that'd never be me. I never thought
Because you
it
weren't
would
gonna
be
get
me.
caught or what?
I mean, you know, I guess for one, you know, because, you know, I thought I never got caught. I thought I was slick enough to not get caught. And I just always felt that there was just something about me that was different from my other peers.
Gotcha.
You know,
Makes sense.
but I couldn't discover that.
Right.
Because I never had people around me to help me discover my purpose.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you talked in 2003, the few hours that you were, before you got apprehended.
Mm-hmm.
So the old saying, you know, were you sorry because you got caught, or were you sorry because, you know, you made a mistake?
I mean, of course I was sorry because I got caught. You know, it was like man, because even when I got caught, I'm sitting there like, man, I'm gonna get out of here. You know, I'm way up here and I don't know where I'm at.
But wheels are turning.
You know, wheels are turning. I see all these law enforcements. You know, I'm hiding in bushes. You know, I'm sorry I got caught. You know, I'm sitting there, oh Lord, forgive me.
Right.
Please, I repent. And you know, all of that's going. My wheels is just turning. But when I actually went into the county jail, and was just isolated from everybody else because I had such a big case.
That was at the very first.
That was the very first.
Okay.
You know, again, imagine I'm uneducated. You know, I pretty much been in the streets all my life, selling drugs, smoking weed. You know, dealing with different people, and you know, so. But I knew that I wanted to change. I didn't know how to change. But in that county jail is when change started to happen, is because you started having people from the outside, meaning people who did prison ministry.
Okay.
So even though I was up in this small hick town, you know, you had people who would come in and volunteers. You had volunteers that would come in through the prison ministry to come and have Bible studies, to come and pray, you know, with me and for me. And that actually was the beginning of me being introduced to prison ministry.
Now what year was that? When was your first encounter with a volunteer?
That was in 2003.
Okay, so right away then you're...
Yeah, so June of 2003 is when I was arrested. And, you know, so several months later, because I spent almost 4 months in the county. So during that time frame, you know, later that year, you know, I started to... I was introduced to prison ministry and to men and women volunteer. So during that period, you know, I started to like, man, these people really love me.
Yeah.
You know.
Was love something that you also, you know, struggled with before your time in prison?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because I mean, I know my parents love me, but like you said, you know, love is an action. Right. So I knew people loved me, but showing me, you know, was different.
Yeah, it's different.
It's different.
Yeah.
You know, so when these volunteers came in, they really showed me that they loved me because they didn't even know me. You know, they didn't know me. And then they didn't judge me. You know, so that I told them about my story. They, you know, and even though I'm here, I was facing 25 years, they was showing me love. And that was the beginning to where when I started to say, you know,
there's something else.
It's something else.
Right.
It's more to life than this.
Was it one organization, or was it one person, or was it just the overflow of it all?
I mean, in that county jail experience, you know, it was the overflow of it all. But you had like local church. You had local church that would come in, you know, volunteer with their free time. You know, that would come in and take the time to listen to me, to take the time to pray with me, to cry with me, you know, so it was, you know, there's some individuals, there's some names that I will not forget that I still remember, you know, there's letters that, you know, that I still have to this day, because those were the individuals early on that planted the seeds,
Right.
and had that impact on my life as I was getting prepared, as we say, for the big house.
Right.
Because, I had never been to the big house. And the big house.
And you're not talking about Michigan.
No, I ain't talking about Michigan either. Not Michigan either, man. The big house was, I call it the lion's den.
Right.
And so, and early on, those volunteers, when they came in through the prison ministry organizations, they played a major role into me going forward,
So you got some good things going on, even though you just got incarcerated, but I'm sure you also had a ton of challenges.
Oh man, I mean, I was 30 years old, fatherless, dealt with being fatherless, dealt with sexual molestation, dealt with being raised in a drug-infested community, being raised pretty much by my mother and my grandmother, but like I said, that upbringing they did the best they could,
Right.
but it was still dysfunctional.
Yeah.
There was challenges, so up to being incarcerated, I mean, you go into a place you never been before,
Right.
with all of these issues on top of facing 25 years and end up, so that, man, that was some challenges. And then I'm going into the big house that, you hear all these stories and it's like, oh man, I'm gonna survive this, and so going into this, institution with a 6th grade education, all I had was street knowledge. I didn't have book smarts. I didn't have book knowledge.
Right.
So now I have to figure out how to become a man when I was never taught by a father how to become a man. It was different. So the challenges, and if I may add, when I went to the institution, what's the first thing I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do what I always done.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to ask you. You said you had some good things, happen to you, right as you prepared it to go into the big house,
Yes.
as you call it. But you also have what you already know.
Yeah.
And your beliefs and you're concrete because you've had them for so long.
Right.
So there's a struggle there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ultimately, I'm sure at times you felt, down and
Mm-hmm.
and the devil kind of took over, and at other times you maybe you saw some light.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and that's and I've shared this story, during my incarceration that like you said, I took my beliefs of thinking that like some people got up, they went to work their 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
Selling drugs was my 9-to-5 job.
Right.
So now, because I'm in prison, does that supposed to stop? No.
And did it stop or
It didn't stop.
Didn't stop.
So now I got to figure out how to incorporate this lifestyle where I'm about to spend a nice number, almost a decade.
Right.
And so it was then probably that. So even though going back to the county, how the volunteers came in and deposited good things into me, but so that first year, 2003, I got into the institution by October 2003, but it didn't take long. So for several months, of course, my mindset was still about, doing what I always done.
Right.
And so, probably within that 6 months, I started observing. Now I'm starting to see other volunteers come in. People coming in, volunteer. Talking about the Word of God. Organizations like Kairos is one of the organizations. The prison ministry. It's just a variety of different things.
Right.
And so as I started to involve myself, the life that brought me to prison had to change.
So was it something that happened slowly, or was there one aha moment that really changed things?
It was really like a aha moment. Like, no, Well, what it is, and this is important. There was a gentleman who was in for about 25 years.
Yeah.
And he pulled me to the side. He said, "It's just something different about you." And here's something that he told me. He said, "In order to see the picture, you must step out of the frame."
Right.
But he never explained that to me.
That's a good one, yeah.
He said, "In order to see the picture, you must step out of the frame." So for months, I said, "Man, what is he talking about?" Until one day it clicked.
Yeah.
And what he was telling me, man, if I'm going to see my life, I must step back. And I really need to look at this picture. And I need to look at myself. And I need to look at my environment, look at everything around me. And when I started doing that, I started stepping back.
Right.
And I kept the picture in front of me. And what I saw, I didn't like.
Right.
And so that's when that aha moment was like, I got it. I figured it out. Well, and then I got in school. I got in high school, man. I started with 0 credits. And I graduated in 18 months with 23 credits.
That's why you were inside then?
While on the inside. This is only like a year and a half.
Wow.
That I'm in, within this time.
Right.
And so by that time now, I'm starting to be introduced to your organizations like, the Kairos programs, your prison ministries, the chaplain services, so I started getting involved.
Right.
I got involved. And so probably within that 2 year, I was involved with reentry and that changed my life.
Wow, that's awesome. So, first, I'm sure it started just for yourself to be saved,
Mm-hmm.
but later, obviously, it's evolved into helping others,
Mm-hmm.
Save their lives and become closer to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something that happened, while you were incarcerated, or maybe just towards the end you were thinking about, like, what am I going to do next, and maybe you saw some of the issues as you were, incarcerated during your time?
It was a little mix of before incarceration, during incarceration, and after. Before incarceration, because of the way I was raised, I never wanted nobody to go through what I went through.
Okay.
I didn't want anyone to experience the things that I was experiencing as a child, as an adolescent, as a teenager, as a young adult, So I had always had a heart for people. So, I will always, even in the midst of my struggle, 2 wrongs don't make a right, sin is sin. But even when I was doing illegal things, I would still find ways to help someone else out.
Yeah, so it was always within you, you just didn't know how to use it.
Didn't know how to use it
Right.
for a good cause. So during incarceration, as I started to involve myself with, reentry programs, volunteers coming in from the outside, to support us, to encourage us. Once I got involved, it encouraged me more. So now, I wanted to take those things and try to help my fellow inmates. I started to, start encouraging people, talking to people, and I realized I know how to write.
Right.
So I started writing up programs, and I started getting involved with reentry. I'm starting to learn. I'm starting to become a man.
Right.
And then that just spilled over to after incarceration.
So obviously you got your sentence reduced.
Yeah, I was facing 24.5 years, and I took it on the chin, as we say. I took 9.5 years on the chin because I just said there's no way I'm going to beat the state on this case.
Okay.
So I said I take the 9.5 years, and through the grace of God, I ended up doing 7 years.
Okay, so that puts you out at 2010 then?
2010, June 18th.
June 18th. So 2010, you get out. And what's it like when you're getting released? And did you go back to the people that you had contact before, and just what's some of the challenges that you faced, as soon as you got out?
I mean, I must to back up before I answer that question. What played a major role into me having a successful transition after incarceration was because of the things that I did during incarceration. And again, linking up with the volunteers of the community, the faith-based community, the local churches, the local organizations, the Kairos organization. I stayed in communications with them. So after incarceration, it was still tough. It was still a challenge. It was very hard. It was very difficult. But I had a little foundation when I came out. So when I came out, I had already made my mind up that I had to separate myself from the past, and I was successful with doing that. But it was also a challenge just because, like I said, I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get an employment because I'm an ex-offender. I couldn't. So I had to take restaurant jobs, and I didn't want to go back to prison, so I didn't have license, so I wasn't going to drive because catching a drug case, they take your license from you. So I had the first year, it was very challenging, and to be honest, in that first year, because it was so difficult, I was actually going back to sell drugs.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
And I was setting it up. Everything was being set up. And on this particular night that I was supposed to make the phone call to my connection, they didn't set up voicemail on their end. So my phone call never went through. So I actually had went to church with my family, with my brother.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a ride home. So one of the other brothers from the church had offered me a ride home. But he can tell that I was bothered by something.
Yeah.
And what I was bothered by is that, man, I'm tired of struggling. I'm about to go back to what I always knew.
Right. No, that's.
And I told him what I was about to do. He said, "Nah, man, I'm gonna tell your brother on you." And my brother ended up calling me, and we talked. And basically, I told the people that I'm cool. So I've been home 8 years, going on 8 years, and I have never touched any drugs.
That's awesome.
I have never sold any drugs.
That's awesome.
And I do not associate with anyone who's still in the game. I have friends to where I don't even talk to anymore, because, but that was the reality of my test, and so, but yeah, that's just, for time's sake, there's a lot more other
Right.
challenges and struggles, but those were some of the highlights that again, it went back to all the way to the county when that volunteer came in and prayed for me.
Yeah.
When that volunteer, brought in some brownies, like literally, brought in a cup of juice and sat there and talked with me, those things started to come back to my memory to say, man, I don't want to let them down. And more importantly, they planted a seed in my life.
Right.
That a lot of time we can take for granted,
Absolutely.
So yeah.
So you decided to go back into the prison, as a volunteer. How much later was that after you had got released?
After release, I was released
2010, you said you were released.
2010. So by 2012, well, probably about a year and a half to 2 years later, if that long, that I was familiar with Kairos during my incarceration. It met so many men who had gone through this program called Kairos.
Right.
And upon my release, because I was always still involved with reentry, I was introduced, and because I didn't know Kairos,
When you were inside.
I didn't know Kairos on the inside. I just heard all the good stories. I just heard about it,
right?
And it was at another institution that, and I couldn't get over there because I had, you know, just security reasons and the time frame that I was doing, and so I didn't know about it had a Kairos on the outside. So I just thought Kairos was on the inside. And so I was introduced to the Kairos on the outside by a gentleman named Ed Dokes.
Well, can you explain the difference real quick?
Yeah. So Kairos on the inside, basically, you have volunteers who comes in. You know, you have volunteers from different communities who comes into, you know, the institutions and allow men to just come as they are. You know, you have inmates who are incarcerated. They can have no faith. They can be in different religion groups and different religion backgrounds and different cultures, and so you have this Kairos prison ministry team that comes in and just offer the love of God. You know, that it's just like a weekend program to where, you know, it's a 4-day weekend program that the outside volunteer community comes in and encourage these men, feed them, bring them food, which is just a blessing that they bring home cooked meals into the institution and serve a select group of men. Of course, you can't do the whole institution,
right.
But you know, there's a select number of men that's chosen or that signs up, and in this Kairos program, while the men on the inside, for 4 days, they're allowed to participate. They're allowed to enjoy conversation, enjoy talks, enjoy, you know, food, enjoy cookies. You know, that's, even my eyes lighten up now when you know, talk about the cookies, because lives are changed. And so on the outside, you know, and again, I never experienced that on the inside. I just heard stories. So when I get out here in society and I link up with that Kairos organization, you know, and I'm like, wow, you know, I want to be a part of this.
Right.
You know, and so I became a part of the Kairos team, and you know, back, you know, I think PCI number 6 or 4, I believe, is my first one, and so I was able to just join a group of volunteers, you know, like anywhere from 35 to 40 different men,
right,
that I never met before, and we all had the same goal in mind, is to take the love of God into, you know, these institutions and not beat men up, you know, not beat them up with the word of God. You know, we took the love of God.
That's it, right there, what you just said.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We took the love of God, man, and it changed my life just as a volunteer, to be able to go back into a place where I know I spent most of my life, and to take cookies, to take food, to take love, you know, to take words of encouragement, to take those things and give it, man, just unbelievable.
What's the reaction that you get when you tell them, hey, I was a formerly incarcerated? I'm back.
I remember when they elected me to give a talk, and a talk is, you know, is some of it takes place throughout the Kairos weekend,
right?
You know, and I gave a talk, but before the talk, my interaction with the men, I never told them I was incarcerated.
Oh, really?
Because it wasn't about me,
right?
You know, I just went with the flow of fellowshipping. And so when I was giving my talk, prior to me about to give that talk, I looked out the window and I was watching activities that was taking place on the yard, and the yard is the prison yard.
Yeah.
And God gave me my message right there. But in that talk, I wasn't allowed to talk about God. So
It was early in the program.
Yeah. So I was able to incorporate.
Was that the choices talk?
The choices talk.
Yeah.
So I was able to incorporate what I had witnessed. But like if me and you was looking out that same window,
yeah,
you wouldn't have seen the things that I saw.
Oh, I'm sure.
Even though we looking at the same picture.
Right.
And so when I gave the talk, I started to talk their language. And I started to talk about things and point out things that their faces started to change, because they said, hold on, man, this guy had to be locked up before. And so when I gave my testimony and told them that I was once incarcerated too, a lot of, and from the other brothers who telling me, and their face expression just was like, wow, like, wow, if God can do it for him, he can do it for me.
Right.
And I think that's why Kairos is just so important, man.
So after you gave that talk, did you have guys approach you and?
Oh yeah. I mean, so many men came up to me like, man, I didn't know you was locked up.
Right.
Because I didn't tell them.
Tell them, right.
So I think a whole day went by. Because again, it wasn't about me.
Right.
It was about Kairos. It was about the love of God. So a lot of men came up to me, man, and gave me their testimony and was encouraged. Was like, man, thank you. But for me, it just felt good to be part of that Kairos team.
Right.
Because it was like, man, I was always wondering, what is Kairos?
Right.
I hear people talking about it, but now I had got to experience it. Really, I got to experience it. And like you said, I always say that I'm going to bless them, but it ended up blessing me.
Right.
Yeah.
And like he was talking about a little bit ago about not really introducing God. The way Kairos works is when you first go in, the compassion and the love is really what influences these people.
Mm-hmm.
And once you draw them and influence them, now you can start to talk about, okay, this is where this influence comes from.
Mm-hmm.
With God. So, and one of the first talks that we do, as Tony mentioned, we do several talks. Talks about choices and making different choices.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what he was referring to earlier. So, there's a lot that obviously goes on within a Kairos weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know you didn't go through the program as when you were locked up.
Mm-hmm.
But what's probably the most impactful thing for a lot of the guys you see, or that maybe you could relate to when you were locked up?
I mean, I think the most impactful thing. I mean, there's so many, but I think the most impactful thing is that the men knowing that somebody cares, somebody is praying for them, despite of their mistakes, despite of the poor decision making, despite of whatever it was that brought you into that prison, is that you have people who was praying for you, you have people who loves you, and I have to throw out there, man, cookies, man. I mean, the cookies is life impacting for many reasons. It's because, and again, this is what stood out for me, and these the talks that I've heard, and when I was incarcerated.
Right.
But there's a I believe on one of the weekend days, Saturday if I ain't mistaken, Kairos gives the men in attendance a bag of cookies.
Yeah, that's the forgiveness.
The forgiveness cookies.
That is Saturday.
And I think that's the most. And with those cookies, those men, are to give that bag of cookie to someone they need to forgive.
Right.
And that's in that type of environment, you know, because normally if you take we call them zoom zooms and wham whams, if you take Debbie cake or some cookies to someone, you trying to bribe them, or
Right.
there's some type of corruption or going on. But these bags of cookies, when these men take those cookies and give it to someone that they're supposed to forgive, or that they asked for forgiveness for, they forgiveness cookies, so many men's lives were impacted by that.
Oh man, I couldn't imagine.
So many men's lives have been changed forever, you know, and being a volunteer, you know, knowing that I'm a part of that, you know,
Right.
that I play a part in providing those cookies, you know, or you know, knowing that in our communities, you know, for those who probably may not ever go into the prison and witness to these men, but just providing those cookies through donations.
Did you feel that?
And yes, man, you can feel it, man.
Because yeah, you know, that's the thing from, you know, from the inmate side is,
Yeah.
you know, you obviously see the 36 bodies or, you know, 40 bodies,
Mhm.
however, that are physically there, but it takes so much more to make this weekend successful.
Oh yeah.
You know, and even, you know, for me going in the first time, you know, seeing a wall full of cookies, you know, in boxes,
Yeah.
it's, I mean, you wouldn't even, you know where to begin how many
Right.
cookies are there.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to know, you know, just the time. I mean, you think, okay, a dozen cookies takes 10 minutes,
Right.
you know, and you have 36,000 cookies
Right.
there.
Right.
I mean, you think of all the time that people put in this,
Yes.
you know, and love and support, you know, it's really amazing, and it's awesome to hear that.
Right.
And of course, you know, I see it, you know, going in,
Yes.
that, you know, it's overflowing for those
Yes.
guys, but,
Mhm.
you know, it's awesome to hear
I mean,
from your side.
it's life changing from my side. You know, I mean, it's you know, I literally when the Kairos weekend comes up, when it comes times to bake cookies, you know, I don't even care if I lose a contract.
Talking about his work.
Far as work,
Yeah.
if I lose, I don't even care about losing a contract. It's because I know that my involvement to bake cookies, to encourage others to give,
Right.
you know, because I know the impact it has on those inmates. You know, it's life changing.
Right.
You know, it's life changing.
Absolutely. Do you have a couple stories that you want to? I mean, how many Kairos have you done?
This would be my fourth.
Fourth.
So this be my fourth.
Do you have any special stories or anything that comes to mind that's really, you know, touched you or you know, been special to you?
I mean, actually, the last one I did, it was really challenging. And
In what respect?
and I if I recall correctly, I was a table servant
Okay.
on PCI number 8, and as a table servant, you know, I gave a talk. What it was, I gave a word of encouragement talk, and the very thing that I talked about, didn't know that I was going to be tested. So as I left PCI, I had to go to Dayton, and that was on a Saturday, and I had to deal with a family matter in Dayton. And the very words that I had to encourage the men with, not knowing that, being a part of the Kairos prison ministry team,
Yeah.
not knowing that I was going to have to exercise,
Face that.
I was faced with that challenge.
Wow.
And so, and God see me through, and I held up, and I was disciplined, and I think it was a situation where I was telling these men about being faithful and growing up, being a man of God, and abstaining from sex and masturbation, the things that can cause you problems in your spirit. Right. And I end up being put in that situation with my kid's mom, and I made the right choice.
That's awesome.
But why it was so important is because when I went back to close out that Kairos weekend, I was I had to give that story. I had to tell these men about this because it was real. It was real life. And you would be surprised how many men came up to me and said, man, listen, I'm going through this right now. I needed to hear that. I needed to know that just because you on the Kairos team and when you leave here, you go home, you just showed me that
it continues.
It continues.
Right.
But if you do the right thing, if you make the right choices, you can overcome it. Absolutely. And so that impacted me because I kept thinking like, man, what happened if I would have laid down with her?
Right.
What happened if I would have just said, fed my flesh? I couldn't go back and give them that testimony.
Right.
I would have been there. I would have hindered those men.
Absolutely, yeah, affected your life and their life.
Yeah,
essentially.
And so that probably had a huge impact on me as a volunteer for Kairos.
That's awesome. Do you face any skepticism, outside of, people, when they hear about Kairos that, don't want to frown upon, you volunteering or frown upon them volunteering and donating cookies or time or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, because I think that I don't want to use the word ignorance like I was, but I think lack of knowledge, lack of education. I mean, of course, we know that there are men and women who should be locked up because they made choices, they done things, they have they affected families, whatever it is that they done.
Right.
But a lot of people would say, especially the church community, we should forgive. I mean, we all made mistakes. A lot of us didn't get caught. There are people who's going to view this video and who's making bad decisions. They just don't get caught.
Right.
Absolutely. But I think that if people really start to get information to educate themselves, is to look up the Kairos, prison ministry and watch videos, and you'll really start to see that men and women, can change. God can change them. And I do get those people that, say, I don't want to donate, I don't want to give, but the moment you tell them, when I give them my story, to tell them that, hey, I'm one of those guys that lives you can save.
Right.
I'm one of those guys whose lives has been changed through programs like Kairos. Because a lot of time, most people, even myself, when I think of cookies, I'm thinking of a cold glass of milk. And I'm just thinking about dipping me some cookies in some milk.
Yeah, people don't understand, what do these do? It's just a dessert. You're just feeding them a dessert.
Right.
But you talk about the forgiveness.
Right.
And there's so much more behind it. You have to really be a part of a weekend to understand the full effect of it. But that's what he described as one of the things.
Yeah, man. So when you know that, you get that. You're gonna have people who just say, I just can't support that.
Right.
But I think even those people can be won over if they watch a video. If they see that, guys like me, like, your donation to Kairos cookies and your prayers, even if you can't give money, your prayers.
Absolutely. The prayer changes.
The prayer change, like, the prayer changes, wraps around an entire room, knowing that people is praying for me. That's life changing.
Right.
And I think that once people start to see those videos and educate themselves, they realize that, man, okay, I throw away money, I waste money. But you know, what's $5? What's $1?
Right.
You know, what's a pack of cookies? To
Could be a lot to the inmate.
To the inmate, it's life changing.
To other people, you know, affected by the decision.
Yeah. And then if I may say this, I tell people like, listen, one day, these men and women are coming home. At least let's be a part of the solution.
Right.
And like I said, you know, and get behind good organizations like Kairos and programs that's supporting these men and women, so where when they come home, they come back and be productive members in society.
Absolutely. And one of the things that Tony touched on, you know, a little bit was, you know, the prayer chain. There's the cool thing about Kairos is there's so many different things. There's the forgiveness ceremony with the cookies. We write 36 letters to each individual that's individualized. You know, little things like the letters, these guys they can't, all their mail that they get is pre-read, but through Kairos, we get the special privilege to take unopened letters in. So just the fact that you get an unopened letter from someone, you know, can really impact these guys' lives. And it's really cool to see, because you got 36 guys, and through my experience, most of these guys are going to be touched. I mean, I think everyone, there's two different closings. There's a public closing and a private closing, and I think everyone spoke, you know, at that closing. But it's cool because different things affect different people. I mean, there's even these things called the placemats that the children draw on, that they set their food, that the prisoners set their food on throughout the weekend. And sometimes just a drawing from a child can remind them of their own child, and, you know, bring out a lot of emotion and change for their child, because they want to do better for them. So there's so many different aspects that go into this, and we really just, you know, Kairos, you just keep pounding the love and compassion for 4 straight days, and I always tell people, it's tough to be angry at somebody that gives you cookies.
Right.
I mean, it's tough to be angry at someone that's, you know, positively supporting you for that long of a time period, you know, just consecutively, one thing after the other. So it's really cool.
And if I may add to something you said about the letters, like you said, you have 36 men, I believe, who some of these men don't get any mail.
Yeah, that's
very true. Some of these men they don't have family members that's writing them, you know. And so, can you imagine that you get 36 letters from strangers? You know, I mean, I heard men say, man, they haven't had mail in 5 years. Some men say, I ain't had mail in 10 years. You know, so like you said, you know, there's so much that goes into these Kairos weekends that needs to support, you know, of our local churches, of our families, our friends, the communities, you know, like you said, the placemats, you know, how, you know, you have kids drawing on there, God loves you, and then this inmate, this big old tough guy, when he sit down to eat his meal, he looking at this placemat that some 2-year-old, some 3-year-old, some 4-year-old kid done drew on it, and he just looks at it and just start bawling.
Yeah.
You know, and so much goes into the Kairos weekends that just really needs the support of all of us. You know, as I say, it takes a village to raise a family. So, you know, and it takes a good, loving group of people to really impact these guys' lives.
Right. That's well said. Any closing comments that you want to make, or anything that you want to say that we didn't touch on, or maybe add on, or something? You know, just
you know, again, I really appreciate this opportunity. You know, I just think that this Kairos weekend experience keeps me encouraged. It changed my life. You know, I believe that if we educate ourselves more about men and women who are incarcerated, we know that some have made some bad decisions and made mistakes, you know, but I believe that, you know, if you can, you know, support the Kairos team, you know, with the donations of money, of cookies, of prayer, you know, and even your time to
Right.
volunteer is to get involved. You know, it really can change your life, you know, just as much as it changing a man or woman who's incarcerated.
Absolutely.
You know, so I just thank you for this opportunity, and you know, I really appreciate it, and I look forward to going into during the weekend here in a couple of weeks.
Looking forward to serving with you and,
Yes.
and just watching God work through you.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.